Welcome everyone. We are live from Oslo, where we so far in September have had a fantastic Indian summer. This is our third webinar in the series, The Nordic Battery Scene. We are thrilled to welcome you today and excited about the program that we have created for you. My name is Nora Rosenberg-Grobeck and I head the battery initiatives with Invest in Norway. Invest in Norway is part of Innovation Norway, and we work towards securing that foreign-owned companies establish and grow in Norway. And Innovation Norway also work with export of Norwegian businesses. So with me today, I have my colleague Benedicte Fassmo Våle, who heads our general clean energy activities in Invest in Norway, and who will be moderating part 2 of our webinar today, the challenges, opportunities, and solutions in the power grid. So this webinar series has tried to highlight the Nordic's competitive edge in the battery space, and we have been collaborating with the Eyde cluster, the Confederation of Norwegian Enterprise, Hydro, Northvolt, and Sintef for these events and other activities in the battery space. Our first webinar focused on Green Deal and the value of Nordic collaboration, and the fact that together we represent a strong and wide value chain from raw materials to production, use and recycling, etc. And that we can take a strong position in the European market. The second looked more closely into materials and recycling as part of the value chain, and now we are focusing on electric mobility. The transport sector represents 25% of Europe's CO2 emissions, and sustainable mobility, including electric mobility with the help of batteries, is one of the key focuses of the European Green Deal. Before we welcome the industry to the digital stage, we have the Swedish Minister for Business, Industry and Innovation, Mr. Ibrahim Baylan.
Hello dear Innovation Norway. Thank you so much for allowing me and giving me this time to address you in this very important issue. We are, and I think we all could see that, still in the middle of the global pandemic. It has hit us in a way that nobody expected, and with major challenges, both for public health, but also our economies. And we are combating it, and I think we will keep on doing that for the foreseeable future. But still, it's also very important to both acknowledge and see that we are still in the middle of our other challenges. For example, the climate crisis. We are still in the middle of it, and we need to continue to combat the emissions and also the change in our climate. From the Swedish point of view, we have set the target to become the first fossil-free welfare society in the world. Not because we believe that will change everything, but we want to show the world, we want to be a showcase where you can make things much more sustainable than we are doing today, but at the same time develop our economy, develop our welfare system. Now, is that possible? Well, some people, a lot of people say that's not possible. But I think in the Nordic countries, we have the best conditions to show that it is not only possible, it's the only logical future for humankind and for our world. How do you do that? Well, obviously build on the very good cooperation that we have had for the last 50 years in the Nordic region. I know we have had some challenges during this pandemic with restrictions, with border closings, but I think we need to get back to a situation where we have open borders, good cooperation between the Nordic countries, because with our excellent conditions, our knowledge, our innovation, our resources, our will and ambition to combat the climate crisis, I'm totally convinced that we could do that. We, as a Minister for Energy in my former capacity, I could see that we had already in the Nordic countries had very ambitious and successful work when it comes to reduce emissions in the energy sector, in our residential areas, our industries, but in the transportation sector we could still see that even though we due to modern technology, due to more efficient vehicles, we could see that we had some reductions, it was still not enough. It's still not enough. So I think to transform our transportation sector in a way that it becomes much more sustainable is one of the most important things we could do the coming years. Now, is that possible? Well, I'm totally convinced it is. With the development of batteries, electric highways, I think we have now the chance both to make our transportation sector, our communications much more climate neutral, but also much more efficient than before. We have companies, we have academia that is in the forefront in the world, and I think with a good Nordic cooperation, with good cooperation with the private sector and academia, we could be a showcase in the world and show that it's not possible. It is the only logical way forward, and the Nordic region could be the region who shows the world that it's possible and it's good for both the planet but also for our economies. Good luck with the webinar, and hopefully we'll also have the opportunity to see each other more in real life after the pandemic.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Minister Bailan. And we wholeheartedly agree that we must use the opportunity that COVID-19 actually is to boost the green transition that we are already working on in the Nordics. And we also think that we need to collaborate and cooperate cross-border to establish a strong value chain in the Nordics, a circular value chain for the battery industry. And that's really why we're here today as well, to foster Nordic collaboration in this green transition, where batteries are such an important part and where transportation is such an important part. In the first part of our webinar, we will meet 4 companies or projects that showcase electrification of transport in the Nordics. The Nordics as a region is known as a pioneer within renewable and low carbon electricity, and historically we've been using this energy to power industry such as batteries, but also other energy intensive industry. We are also way ahead of our peers when it comes to decarbonizing the grid, because we have such a high supply of low carbon energy. And we are now electrifying sectors of society. In Norway, for example, half of the cars sold last year were electric vehicles. But we're also electrifying transportation on sea and in the air and other parts of land-based transportation. There's a very strong political will in the Nordics, as Bailan also demonstrated. And there is also a strong will among companies and municipalities in the Nordics, for example. We would now like to invite Åsa Pettersson from Scania to kick off this section. Welcome, Åsa.
Hello, thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Åsa Pettersson. I'm from Scania, as said, and I'm head of public affairs and sustainability. And I am here to share with you today a little bit about how Scania is working with sustainability in general, and of course then focusing on electrification. And I will now see if my screen is shared. Is it working? Yes? Yeah, excellent. So at Scania, we have set up a very clear mission that we want to drive the shift towards a sustainable transport system. And as Nora very clearly pointed out here in the introductions, transport are responsible for 25% of the reductions of the CO2 emissions today. So we know we're facing a huge challenge, as also the Swedish minister Ibrahim Baylan pointed out. With all this said, this means we have a responsibility from the heavy-duty transport sector to contribute. And this is why actually we at Scania earlier this year in May, we committed ourselves to a science-based target. This means that we got a target approved by the Science Based Target Organization, which means we have a target that is aligned with the 1.5 degree target of the Paris Agreement. And this target has been set in both scope 1 and 2. So scope 1 and 2 are the emissions that are directly coming from our operations, and scope 3 are the emissions that happen when our customers use our products. And as you can see here in this slide, we have set ourselves the target to half the emissions from our own internal operations. So that is our own energy use, etc. And energy efficiency in our plants, and also shifting to renewable energy where possible by 50% then to 2025. And in scope 3, so that's when our customers use our vehicles out on the roads all over the world, we have set ourselves the targets to reduce by 20% until 2025. And here it's important to note that actually from our total emissions, the emissions that we are completely responsible for, totally responsible for, only 4% are the internal, or the ones that we are directly responsible for in our operations. So 96% of emissions happen when our customers use our vehicles. And of course, this is because today the fleets are based on diesel. And this is why we need to make a shift towards more renewable fuels and electrification. We looked deeply into this at Scania also in a study published a couple of years ago, where we did a scenario study looking into the segments where we are operating. So that is long haul, distribution and city buses. And we looked at four markets or 4 countries. And we divided the scenario study into 4 different scenarios. One where we focused only on battery electric growth, one where we maximized the use of biofuels globally, and one where we maximized the use of fuel cells, and a 4th scenario where we mixed all of these technologies. And what we found in this study, the question we'd asked ourselves, it was the same one as Ibrahim Baylan also asked: is this possible? Can we reach really zero emissions by 2050 in the transport sector, which is what is needed to meet the Paris Agreement? And the answer was yes. And actually what we saw in our study is that if the world, or the countries that we looked at here, would go for fully electric from the very beginning and start building the infrastructure everywhere, that is actually the cheapest option for society, because electricity is a cheaper alternative in most countries today than diesel, or in all countries. So here it's both possible and actually a better option from an economical perspective for society. Despite all the infrastructure investments that needs to be done over time, this is a more efficient scenario. And it's possible to reach the target in all these scenarios, but at different costs. So biofuels is a bit more expensive and they are not available everywhere. Fuel cells are still a more expensive technology, also due to energy losses, but it's definitely an interesting option in markets where you have a lot of renewable electricity available. So departing from this, we have a strategy at Scania that we have built on our 3 pillars, where we work with energy efficiency, renewable fuels and electrification, and also smart and connected mobility. I don't think my slides are changing anymore, right? But our focus is on all of these 3, and we know we can not do this only with energy efficiency. I would have loved to show you here a picture of our brand new battery electric truck that was launched last week. And that is our first series produced battery electric vehicle that is available for city distribution. It's not moving. My slides are not moving. I cannot do anything about that. But anyway, this truck will now be produced in Sweden, in Södertälje from the beginning of next year. So it's available for orders from customers, and we are very proud of that this is now a part of our current offer. And of course, we foresee that electrification will start happening very quickly in our sector. We see that the technology is ready. Our customers are interested in this technology, but of course, this has to be affordable. And the first step of this is really to build the infrastructure. So we need to work in partnerships together with our customers and also our customers' customers, the one asking for the transport, to make sure that we have a value chain from our perspective. Then, of course, we need to secure the batteries, and that's why we have a cooperation with Northvolt ongoing already since several years, where we are building knowledge together on what is needed for a battery electric truck. We are also looking into the option of dynamic charging with electrical roads, where you have overhead lines, because of course the challenge here is the grids that we will go. That is the focus later in the seminar today. Where is the capacity enough along the roads? Probably not. So we would need to enforce the grid capacity along the roads where we want to electrify. Here there is an advantage of dynamic charging because you don't need, you can charge while you drive. So you don't need, the stress on the electrical grid will not be as high. But of course, everything starts with charging stations, so stationary charging. So we need to also enforce the grids where you can stop and charge. So this is a huge task that we need to face together in the whole value chain of electrification, together as vehicle manufacturers, battery producers, TSOs and DSOs that will be on this seminar later today, and our customers and customers' customers. Together, what policy? Thank you very much, and sorry for not being able to move my slides forward.
Åsa, that was a shame, but I'm sure we can figure that out and send out to everyone watching.
Of course.
We now give the word to Geir Bjørkeli from Corvus, who is representing the maritime sector today. So thank you, Åsa. We'll hear from you later. And welcome to Geir.
Thank you very much. Let's see if I also are able to share my screen. Here we are. Okay, so then you see. Thank you very much. Then I will take you through my presentation. Corvus, we are the leading supplier of battery storage for the maritime and offshore sector. That means that we only focusing on the maritime industry and we don't pay any attention to other industry. Even that could be tempting. We think it's very important that we are doing this only for the marine, so we can focus on a niche market that we can lead. Very quickly about the company. It's 11 years old, headquartered now in Norway, and you see we have a relatively strong owner base that's supporting us in development of the company. The unique part of Corvus is that we mix the superior battery knowledge with a strong maritime DNA and a culture of innovation. So that's the backbone of the company, is the deep battery knowledge mixed with maritime DNA. We position ourselves in the value chains that we don't do any battery technology as such. We are buying battery cells from the major makers like LG, Samsung, Panasonic, and we also have discussion with Northvolt. But in order to use those batteries in the marine application, we need to have a detailed knowledge about the battery cell, because we are running the battery totally different in the marine world than you do on land. That is a much more heavy use when you, for example, making a fully electric ferry or you're having in the hybrid solution on an offshore vessel. And we are delivering those batteries that we make to the system integrators, or who make the electrical system on board, and to the ship owner and the shipbuilder. And as you see from that slide, we have been delivering to all the major electrical integrators, and we are very proud of the ship owner that have been trusting us so far. And you see we have major ship owners from the Nordics and rest of the world. We have been pioneering, and we are still pioneering. You see here a selection of vessels from the first electrical fishing boat, and we see now almost every new fishing vessel are using battery in some way. Of course, not so many can do full electric like the small fishing boat, but they're using the batteries in hybrid configuration, where you're really saving fuel and emissions when you are operating on low loads. You see the next one, of course, is the ferry. We have the batteries on board Ampere. She is the mother of all battery ferries, and we see now the most of the ferries. Yeah. Okay, so it's not. Yeah, I think everything is locked because I am out of presenter mode. So. It's just hanging. So I'm on slide 3. No, I'm on slide 5. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And can you please say next slide, and then the technicians will
okay.
help. Then, thank you. Sorry, everyone, and thank you, Geir, for your patience.
No, it seems there also that it's locked on my. No, but okay, then we don't spend more time. We don't waste more time. But if you look at the one, we see that we are not only on the ferry and the supply sector. We see tugboats, tankers, rigs, and the bigger passenger vessel utilizing battery. Not all of them fully electric, because but some in hybrid, for the possibility to run in zero emission mode. Then the next slide. You see the challenge is, of course, and we can just take the next slide after. Then there was just a stop slide. The challenge is, of course, that we have enormous pollution from the ocean industries, and that's the reason why, since most of the ships are burning the most dirty fuel you can think about with the heavy fuel oil. But the good news is that the efficiency of those propulsion systems are so bad, so we can easily reduce up to 75% of this through existing technology. And of course, easily is maybe a wrong word, but just with existing technology, batteries, we can, and others, we can dramatically reduce. Next slide, or just take 2 slides in one go. We see the development going very quickly now when it comes to deploying energy storage in the maritime sector. In the beginning, we had the challenge on the technical side, and there's a lot of one-off project, but we have proven now that there are no technical issues with this battery. Corvus alone have more than 350 projects, so it's no doubt that this is working. With these 350 projects, we're starting to have a lot of operational feedback. We alone have more than 3.5 million running hours collecting up in the cloud. So we have very detailed knowledge about how these batteries are used and how they operate and how they will work. We also start to have good cases. One is on the electrical ferries and operating on pure electricity compared to diesel oil. It's a huge cost saving, but also in the commercial field for offshore supply not mention about the fishing boats, that you are having enormous cost saving by changing from diesel to electricity, and even in hybrid mode, where you really remove the low load operations, you're saving a lot of fuel. But another good thing is that in many of those operations in hybrid, you're also reducing number of running hours on the engine. So some examples, the contribution for reduced maintenance is equally as the reduced fuel. One of the next driver, of course, is all the regulatory issues. We have the IMO. Here in Norway, we start to have zero emission for passenger vessel in the world in heritage fjords. And we see also from around the world that the governments and local politicians are trying to tighten up the regulation on emissions in different ports. But the most important factor now, especially on cruise, but also in general cargo, is the social responsibility. You see the passengers on the cruise liners will not willing to go on a polluting cruise. And we see also that the cargo owners start to take position where they really want to measure the CO2 footprint in their value chain, and some of them stepping down developing project, like we see here in Norway with ASKO, we see now with Heidelberg Cement, and we see with the Felleskjøpet. The cargo owners they are impatient, and they really want to change the world by going electric. Then you can also take one more slide, and you can actually take another slide immediately. The benefit of using batteries on board ship is, as I mentioned, reduced running hours, and to ensure that the batteries are running an optimal load, and to reduce the total energy consumption and emission. Safety is a major thing. When you have battery on board a ship, you have a big UPS that will take over and to avoid any blackout situation, and that gives less unplanned and planned maintenance, and gives higher profitability and a green footprint. Next slide. Here you see just the battery modules that we make for marine use currently, where we make these modules, and we can put them together in racks, and depending on the battery size you want to have in a boat, you just put as many of those racks as you like. So it's a very modular and cost-efficient way. Next slide. Then you see the next generation that we are selling to cruise vessels or other ships that want to carry much bigger batteries and much more many megawatt hours on board. Then we need to pack them differently and utilize the space. So here is an example of what we call the blue whale battery. And then you can take next. I just took one case there, or even one more. So you see the North Sea Giant. That was the first DP3 vessel, and you see the savings there on one simple vessel on 5.5 million kilo of CO2 and the NOx and SOx reduction. And then on top here, this configuration of battery allow them in some cases to run with one engine instead of in the past they need to run with 6 engines. Not only the battery itself who arranged that, but a more modern electrical system on the board also allow this to happen. Okay, I apologize for not being able to share this presentation in the best way, but that was what I had for today.
Thank you very much, Geir. And our next speaker, we have to go a bit quickly here, is Erik Svedlan from Epirock. Welcome, Erik.
Hello, Erik Svedlan, Epirock. I hope I can share my presentation and screen. Otherwise, I've sent it to Nora on your side, so maybe you can pick it up there if this doesn't work. So I'm head of marketing and business development at Epirock, or Epirock Electrification. Epirock is a fairly large company. Giving you a small background of what we do here. About 15,000 employees all over the world, customers in more than 180 countries, and a revenue of about 4 billion euros annually. And that is an important background. We are a large company. We produce mining machines. Mining machines used both on surface and underground. And my division and where I'm working focusedly is the underground. In the underground segment, we have over 100 models of different machines, from large tunnel machines, small tunnel machines, drilling rock, mechanically drilling rock, material handling, etc. So why are we electrifying? Well, the world is moving towards zero emission, and this transition increases the need of raw materials. And at the same time, the raw extraction of raw materials is heavily depending on fossil fuels. And this is where we come in. We produce the machines that extract the raw materials and consume the fossil fuels. So as a world-leading OEM, we have a responsibility. So we have to think about and help our customers reduce our industry's environmental footprint, and how can we move towards sustainability? And how can we increase also mining social license to operate? Today, many mines have difficulty opening because the not in my backyard mentality. Mining is part of the solution, but also part of the problem. Also, our customers have a unique situation. They are underground. And the situation changes every year with about 30 meters. The average mine depth increases with about 30 meters every year. And cost increase with depth. So our customers' cost levels changes every year, and we need to work with that, making sure we have the right products at the right time to make sure our customers is profitable. We also run diesel machines in this environment. Of course, that is problematic. There's always new legislation, rules, and standards coming all over the world, and safety and health is a trend that will always improve. Now, we know that diesel exhaust is not that healthy to breathe. We have to address this. At the same time, the environmental aspects comes in. How do we meet our global challenge with global warming, and how do we reduce our carbon dioxide? So there is different technologies that could apply to improve this, but the only way forward as we see it is zero emission. Zero emission means no diesel exhaust at all, no diesel particulate matter, no toxic gases, and reduced heat and noise. And therefore, battery electrification. So we've been working with this for seriously since 2010, with focus on launching a global fleet for zero emission. And the reason for this is because we have a unique business case in our business. This is why we are leading, and that is the ventilation. The cost for ventilation is normally one of the biggest energy cost for a mine, and anything or anywhere you affect this has a big impact of the cost of a mine. So flow is the lower linear blue line, and the power consumption for that fan. If anything we need can have effect on the flow, has a huge impact of the cost of electricity for that mine, for the ventilation. So in 2016 we launched our first serial produced machines, battery electric. This was a learning process. We were learning, we were testing the market. We see that yes, this will work, and there is a market and customers are willing to buy this. So the second generation was launched in late 2018. And this is not so much of a number of machines as it is a technology platform. A technology platform that we will then be able to launch all our machines on. And this is very important because, as I said, we have over 100 different models. We cannot do one at a time. We have to do them all at the same time. And that's where the technology platform comes in. I think some of the other speakers mentioned here that this is a huge shift. And we need partnerships to be able to do this. And some of the important partnerships in this is ABB and Northvolt. With ABB, we have developed a range of electric motors and drive lines for these machines. And with Northvolt, we have designed a battery system that is scalable, that can fit all our machines. And this is really important to be able to support this globally and also reach economy of scale. Because without economy of scale, the cost is too high and you will not be able to do this. We also talk about infrastructure. We need charging of these batteries and these battery machines. And today there is no charging infrastructure in the mines. But there is electrical infrastructure, but it's also very limited in power. It's because it's limited to the power demands we have there today. If we introduce these battery packs, or battery machines, and gonna quick charge them, we're gonna quickly destroy the grid in the mine. We're talking about many megawatts of power needed per machine if we quick charge. And therefore we have designed and decided to design a system that can work within the existing infrastructure. And here we swap batteries. We swap a battery in 5 minutes, and that is the fastest way to refill energy into a machine. With swapping of batteries, we can have one battery on charge, and that can then use the average power consumption for such a machine. And what we see here is a machine that then quick charging will be above a megawatt, and slow charging we can manage with about 60 to 80 kilowatts. Now, innovation, when you introduce new technology, you normally see the technology as the innovation, but you also have to consider business models. Business model innovation is just as important as it is with technology. Now, here's one challenge. The batteries are replacing diesel. The problem is that batteries is a capex expenditure for our customers, and diesel is an operating expenditure. Now, this does not match. So how do we meet this? How do we help accelerate the transition to zero emission? And Epirock do this by offering, as an alternative to buying batteries, batteries as a service. With that, we can match the existing budgets for our customers, and it's an easier entry. So our customers says, great Epirock, but what about the others? You don't produce all the machines in a mine, so what do we do? Well, to be able to address that, battery electrification and this technology shift is difficult. So we have started to work with some other companies in the business and to help them electrify, to help our customers reach their goals. By doing that, we try to create a circular economy, a circular business model where we address all these difficult steps. I have talked some of these today, but and we try to make the global goals as part of our company strategy. That was what I had today. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. That was very interesting. Next up, we have Tor Iverson presenting the Green Flyway project and the aviation industry. So, welcome, Tor.
Thank you very much for inviting Green Flyway to this event. It's been quite interesting to follow the first presentations here, and I'm here to talk a little about Swedish Norwegian cooperation. Some of the first speakers they have mentioned cross-border cooperation as one way of setting the scene and reaching the goal. Well, Green Flyway is an international test runner for sustainable aviation, and a little bit of the background here is it started all back in 2017. Another study followed in 2018, and a feasibility study concluded in 2019 that test arena like this was much needed. During the feasibility study, we were in contact with almost 60 different actors nationally and abroad, and they all said that the possibility to flying point to point when testing electric aircraft or other kinds of aircraft was very important to them. So we have started this project. It will go on until 2022. Hopefully it will live on after that. And we have a budget for this period, as you can see on the slide. So what about the project owners? The project is owned by the municipality of Røros and the municipality of Östersund, but we have many partners with us. Some of them national companies and some of them are regional companies. But as you can see from this slide, we have a lot of interesting partners. And for electrification of aviation, we are especially proud of Heart Aerospace, which on Wednesday will tell us how they are dealing with electrification. They are developing an aircraft which will be capable of taking 19 passengers and will be really, really good for the regional market in the Nordics. So what are we talking about? We have airspace, a large area between Røros and Östersund. In the flying time, it depends on the aircraft, obviously, but we also have Sveg Airport now as a part of the project, so we have a lot of airspace available in mid-Scandinavia, where you can test your aircraft or drones or whatever you want to test, especially in wintertime. You will have great opportunities here. And we have two full-scale airports, Røros, with a runway of 1,720 meters, and Östersund with 2,700 meters. And Östersund being a former Air Force base, they have all the facilities you need, and you also have that at Røros. So what is Greenfly? As you can see from this slide, we are really central in the Nordics, and it is a unique and a one-of-a-kind test facility and a test arena for electric aircraft, UAS, ATS, and ground support. We also have two international airports here, Trondheim and Östersund, and also several other airports. Airspace upon request, we have two universities, Midt-Universitetet, Mid-Sweden University in Östersund, Sundsvall, and also NTNU, the Norwegian University of Science and Technology here in Trondheim. And they obviously have departments in Gjøvik and Ålesund as well. And as you may be aware of, we have several research, development, innovation actors here in the region already. We have developed 7 different work packages here, which will each develop or deal with different kinds of this project. And the most interesting package for this webinar is the green energy storage and charge and tanking infrastructure work package, because we are technology neutral, so we can see that both sun and wind and hydrogen, battery, electric is part of the solution. But as we will speak about later in this webinar, the amount of energy needed here is something that we don't need, even though we have a partner within the Green Flyway project that develop aircraft. We still don't have a global standard for electrification of aviation, so that is much needed. So if you would like more information on this package later, I will be more than happy to provide you with that. So we have started. We had the first winter test with an electric small aircraft, that is, in December 2019, and the aircraft from the Czech Republic called Phoenix by a company called PureFlight performed the world's first winter flight with an electric aircraft across national borders between Sveg and Røros in February, just prior to the COVID crisis. And we also have other exciting entities testing in the area, and other ones are coming. So what about the crisis? For aviation, as you may know, aviation is greatly affected by the COVID crisis. But I think personally that this crisis can accelerate the change. The biggest cost drivers for an airline today is fuel, airfares and taxes, personnel and maintenance. And both fuel and maintenance costs can be reduced by switching to new technologies. Whether that be electric operations, hybrid electric operations, or bigger amounts of biofuel. So why are we in Sweden and Norway? Well, as I like to say it, we have it all. We have renewable energy from hydropower, wind and other sources, which is a big advantage in this area. We have, as others have already have said, we have motivated stakeholders on a national, regional and local level. We have at least the tech-friendly population embracing new technologies fast. As was said earlier, we can show to Norway which where 50% of all cars sold last year were electric and zero emission. And as of course we have political and governmental willingness to push for change through incentives and active support for the transition, as we saw last week when the Swedish government provided 100 million Swedish krona for developing electric aviation in 2021 and 2022. And we see that Finland is also taking steps. Finavia, which is the airport operator there, they are supporting this transition as well. And we have a lot of ongoing projects and incentives in the Nordics already. And as you may or may not be aware of, EU and Norway signed an agreement last year on electrifying aviation, and the first report from the high level board of this cooperation, it will be published later this year. We have the Green Flyway, I don't mention that anymore, and we also have NEA, which is facilitated by Sweden, which is a Nordic network for electric aviation. We also have a rather new initiative in the Kvarken region, which also intends to improve or implement electric regional aviation. And as far as I can see, sustainable aviation is the future. It's no doubt about it. It's about putting resources on the table, finding global standards, and if all this is done, I think we will be able to reach the Norwegian goal, which is the first civil electric passenger flight in regional traffic within 2030, and that all domestic civil aviation shall be zero emission within 2040. So sustainable aviation is the future. Sustainable aviation is a part of the solution, and Green Flyway are here to provide a test arena where all this testing can be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tor, and thank you to our other presenters as well, Åsa, Geir and Erik. Our colleague Thea Skøyen in Stockholm will take over now to wrap up and also do a short Q&A of the session. Thea?
Thank you, Benedicte, and thank you, Åsa, Geir, Erik and Tor, for giving us some very good examples of Norwegian and Swedish companies' initiatives pioneering the development of the next generation of transport solutions. Some of the keywords that you have highlighted today is one is political will, political action. We see that the high share of EVs in Norway is a result of both political will and political action. Last week, the Swedish government proposed an allocation of 500 million Swedish kroners to electrification of heavy transport for 2021, 50 million kroners to electrification of heavy machinery, and also 50 million Swedish kronor to electrification of aviation. So we see that we have political will, political ambitions with this transition. Erik, you mentioned the need for partnerships, and I think that partnerships and collaboration is a key factor for the success and positioning of the Nordics. We do have complementary competence. Norway with the charging infrastructure due to the high share of EVs. Sweden, you have a great car industry, and we can put this together and become even stronger. And then you also mentioned the cost perspective. We need to have cost-effective solutions. And I think all of you mentioned the transition and electrifying as a way to reduce cost for the customers and end users. And we have seen that these initiatives, land-based, aviation, underground, you're at different stages of maturity. And how can you learn from each other? And also you see different challenges for the future development. Scania, you mentioned your milestone now with your first battery electric truck for city distribution. And Geir, you mentioned the new fishing vessels now being hybrid solutions. And from the aviation side, we see that international standards is vital for the future development and electrification of the aviation industry. And infrastructure is a part of, or is the topic for the next part of the webinar, where the development of the grid will be discussed. And we need reliable access to power both for the energy intensive industry, for the battery production facilities, and also for the transportation systems. So do you have one last short key message that you want to pass on to the next speakers from the DSOs and the TSOs? Åsa, do you want to start?
Yes, with pleasure. Thank you very much, Thea. Yeah, you rounded this off or summarized this very well. And my message would really be this cooperation and that we need to together look at where the capacity is needed in the future, because I think that will actually be the major obstacle here. So we need to start that planning process together now. And we can see with our connected vehicles exactly what the fuel consumption looks like today. So we have a very good indication of where the infrastructure is needed and hence where the potential bottlenecks would be in the electrical grid. So let's start that planning together and investing now in the grids. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Åsa. Geir, do you want to continue?
Yeah, I want to highlight that, of course, the marine industry here is in Norway and the Nordics. We have come quite far with many ships, and we have already built infrastructure. But the problem is the cost, because today we have batteries and charging stations in the ports for the ferries, but those batteries are only serving the ferry, and therefore it's a high cost for the government or for the ferry riders. We need to make sure that those batteries that are there now are also serving the grid and can serve other things, that we can share the cost. So we have taken the cost already as a taxpayers on the west coast of Norway, but the grid companies and the utility companies need to make sure that they also utilize this to balance the grid, or we can use those to charge the buses and ferry and cars on the ferry terminal. So this kind of smart ship shore grid combination, I think is something for the future.
Thank you, Geir. Erik?
Yes, so I really want to emphasize that, and we can see also here that electrification, that's happening now. It's a really interesting period in the world, and the demand for green products, both from consumers and from investors, is huge. If you don't meet this, we're not going to be having our customers as customers, or we're not going to have any investors as investors. So it's a big challenge to make sure we meet this. Some of the challenges here is competence. This technology shift is the same as when we went from horses to cars. The old, base of knowledge is not there anymore, and we have to relearn. And for us as a company that's going out, we have 5,000 service engineers that we need to train to make sure that they can take care of this technology. That is a challenge. So I really call for the schools and for the governments to make sure we have the right competence going forward. I also believe that we will have to have new business models. The old business models is linear with end of line kind of thinking. We need to introduce more circularity in the business models. The infrastructure is interesting in our segment where the mines, we work with industries business to business, and there the grid is owned, so to say, by the mine inside the mine. So it's their challenge. But on surface or on highway, whose responsibility is it to build the infrastructure? It is interesting. We have to face it because our customer has the problem, but there on highway, whose responsibility is it? Also, there is this technology shift opens up a new competitive landscape, and new players and partnerships will be needed, and new players will come up. It's interesting. But also, I want to emphasize that electrification for us is good both for the environment and for our business. So we see this as a big business opportunity. Yeah, that's my final takeaways.
Thank you, Erik. And Tor from the aviation industry, what's your key message?
Well, I think most of what the others already have said also is a part of the problem or solution for aviation. But I'm coming back to the standardization, and there is work ongoing for standardization electric aviation, but they have not reached a goal. Maybe next year, maybe the year after. We don't know yet. But until we have global standards for electric aviation, the airports or the energy providers, they do not know what to plan for. So standards are vital to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Tor. So with that, I think the message we send back to the studio in Oslo is cooperation and in infrastructure and flexibility, access to competence and standardization. So thank you from us, and we'll go back to you in the studio, Benedicte.
Yeah, and thank you to all our 4 presenters. You summed it up quite well. We have it all, Tor said. We have lots of renewable energy, but the problem is often that we don't have the energy where we need it, and that's what we are going to be addressing right now. The grid operators are the players who both transport the power between the production and the consumers. They know that it takes years to build grid, to enforce grid, but the world is changing quicker than they are able to build their power lines. So we now ask the regional grid operators, and both of them are actually also large power producers, how they are working to satisfy these demands. Rune Hogda works at Auger Energy, a large energy producer and grid owner in southern Norway. He works in a daughter company called Nodes, and they work with flexibility markets. We also have Peter Serderstrom from Vattenfall. He'll follow up by telling us a bit about how they are working in this space. And with that, I ask Rune to take the digital stage.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm head of what we call Auger Energy Flexibility, which is a startup accelerator. And we use the domain competence within Auger Energy to search for new business opportunities in this industry. That is really transforming at the moment, together with a lot of other industries, which we just heard from transportation. And the collaboration is key. And I will also tell you more about Nodes, the Nodes flexibility market. So first, very briefly about Auger Energy. We are located at the tip of Norway. We produce 100% renewable power from our 47 hydropower stations. and we are among the third biggest producers in Norway, but we also have the grid, we also have retail company and so on, so we call ourselves a vertical integrated power utility. Norway holds 50% of Europe's hydro reservoirs, and a lot of them are located actually at the south of Norway. So that is why we say we have been dealing with flexibility for more than 100 years already, at least from the production side. Like 7-8 years ago, we started to look more and more into the challenges the grid are facing. We saw the shift now towards a lot of more renewable power production, especially in Europe and so on. We also saw the change in customer perception, choosing EV cars and other elements, and we saw that these things are really challenging the grid. We also see that we have technology that can be a part of the solution. So we started an innovation project together with Microsoft, focusing on one of our substations, Eyde substation, which were going to be upgraded. There were going to be an investment of 5 million euros in this substation. So our challenge was, can we use technology as IoT, cloud-based solution, advanced analytics, and so on, together with our demand response technology, and try to postpone this investment. And so we did. So we avoided the overload situation during winter time in 2017. And then that was just a check. Yeah, the technology is here, it's working, but actually it's not the technology which is crucial here. Actually, it's the business model, and it's this value change who are changing, and new business opportunities will arise. So we took the innovation project into the next level, focusing more and more around what will the business models be and what will be the roles. So we also saw that we have to motivate to make these flexible assets available. And also we believe that the regulation will change. So then also there will be new buyers of flexibility, potentially the local DSOs. So with this perspective, we saw that the grid operators need a lot of new tools. We have to make the local flexibility available, and that has to be technology independent. And there also has to be a facilitator in between. Working with this practical approach, as we started with Microsoft and started also with some key collaboration partners in the first pilot, we have expanded more and more, where we work with concrete use cases with different in different pilot and different projects. That is why we say that we have a pilot and partner strategy, because we believe we cannot solve this alone. And in 2018, we also teamed up with Nordpol when we established nodes, which I will tell you more and more about later. And this example you see here is from the Nordflex project. Nordflex project is based actually on the Eyde pilot, but now we're going into big scale. So we have invited competitors, customers, end users, of course, vendors and so on, more than 20 different partners who have connected into this project, where we're going to show a big scale flexibility market with more than 20 partners here. So we say we are building these ecosystems of platform in every pilot or project we go into with this practical approach. We have this approach to solve a problem. So when it comes to nodes, which is one of the projects that now is come quite far in the stage of being a startup, Nodes has been established as an independent market operator. The reason is we believe in a marketplace that will support the drive to an emission-free society. Nodes believe in unlocking the true value of flexibility by operating an open, transparent, integrated and independent marketplace. So Nodes facilitates the trading between those who needs flexibility and those who offer local flexibility. So the key is to make local flexibility available to all parts of the grid as an integrated and independent marketplace. So nodes can create a bottom-up market where different type of flexibility compete on a level playing field. The right flex to the right price on the right location to the right time. So there is no limitation even in volume or time resolution when it comes to this market platform as nodes is made on. As I told you earlier, the approach is practical. We go into different projects. I just mentioned a couple of these. One of the first project we had was in Germany, in the Mittnetz case, we call it. That was a congested line on the distribution level. So renewable power was curtailed to avoid this congestion. And we put up the marketplace and the ecosystem of platform with partners and so on. And we showed that we could avoid curtailing renewable production. And the market solved that with reducing gas turbines and so on. That also had a huge CO2 effect, of course. Intraflex is a UK pilot ongoing as we speak. So here we are operating the flex market close to real time with the EV cars and batteries from private households. And here we as I said, we are operating flexibility close to real time. And also Stockholm Flex, I believe that Vattenfall will tell more about, but our role here is to be the independent market operator in this project that is under establishment. So just to round it off, I told you now mostly about nodes, which we see as a new business model, like a bottom-up revolution when it comes to utilizing the resources that is already there. Of course, we see also that the grid operator, even that being a DSO or TSO, really need new tools now to do simulation, forecasting, optimization, and congestion management, where one of the ways of solving the problem is to buy flexibility. Just to mention that. So I will stop there. We have a lot of challenges ahead and a lot of opportunities. Collaboration is key, and I will pass the word to Peter Serderstrom from Vattenfall. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Peter Serderstrom. I work for Vattenfall Distribution Sweden. So the unbundled part of Vattenfall, and I'm sure that most of you are familiar with Vattenfall and that we are a large utility in many parts of the value chain in Northern Europe. I will talk a bit about what we are doing in terms of engaging in flexibility and seeing flexibility as part of the solution, primarily in Sweden to solve capacity challenges that has shown up in various parts, and I will get back to that. So first, what has happened? Well, I'm sure you all know that we are seeing new customers showing up that require shorter lead time to get their connection to the network, and we also see that the demands and the usage of these new customers are typically with higher capacity demands. And this is, of course, in addition to the normal increase of electrification in society. For example, we can see singularities like battery factories, but also data centers that are very large. In electrification of the industry, hybrid and so forth are happening that with huge requirements. And on the smaller scale, of course, as we have been talking here, the electrification of the transport sector is happening. How can this then be a challenge? Well, it's partly a new situation for the DSO, and it's oriented very much around that the subscription between the DSO and TSO levels, or even between inside the DSO itself, between the sub-transmission network, regional network that we have in Sweden, and the distribution network where there is subscription, and there are bottlenecks showing up. In this slide, you can see an example of the the situation in Uppsala, one of the areas where we have a capacity challenge. First, take a look at the time scale on the x-axis. Here we are talking up until 2032. For building networks, this is basically tomorrow. This is something that is happening now. Depending on how you do the prognosis here, you can see that we have very many different ways moving forward. We have a few dotted lines, we have with certain assumptions, and we have one level moving forward that is the blue line going ahead. And the TSO subscription level you can also see, which puts the limitation. And depending on how it develops, we need, of course, to deploy different solutions in order to satisfy society and customers. We will not stop building networks. We will continue to build networks, but networks takes time to build, and therefore flexibility is an important part to be able to, in a more timely fashion, satisfy new customer
Peter,
demands.
excuse me, I have to interrupt you and ask you to go into presentation mode because your slides aren't...
Okay,
there.
sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, so I hope, I'm sorry about that. The slide will show up. It is not very detailed, the slide, so I don't think you are missed much. Anyway, it's important to keep building networks in order to satisfy the basis of our needs and the basis of the development, but in order to more timely satisfy the needs from the customers, flexibility is a very important tool. This example was from the Uppsala case, but we are seeing, for instance, the same thing in Stockholm, and I will get back to that as well. What is then the challenge here? Well, forecasting, going back again, saying we don't really know how the future looks like. We don't have the crystal ball, and the one trying to look into the crystal ball are getting up in very many different scenarios. And what scenario should we trust? Moving forward with flexibility and forecasting. Forecasting is important, or considering all types of flexibility that is possible to use for the DSOs. Primarily when we talk about flexibility, we are meaning market-based flexibility, something that you either buy on a market or it is something that could be provided with some form of service from a market solution, demand response, battery storage, or something similar. But that's only one type of flexibility that the DSO has to have the possibility to use. We have something, let's call it contractual flexibility. That's the flexibility that you get from tariffs, even local tariffs that's being opened up, at least in Sweden. We can look at bilateral agreement or what's in the connection agreements, even if the connection agreements part is something of a fuzzy part of the regulation. So you can, through these, and these are of course not very agile methods, flexibility methods, but they are still providing flexibility into the system. And finally, we have the technical flexibility. That's the way how we select to operate our network, the risk level that we are employing into our network. For instance, we can overload certain parts of our grid for limited time periods in order to provide flexibility. And all of these types of flexibility are really the same in order to solve the capacity challenge. So there is no one that's better than the other. All of these provide benefits. It's important, however, what we are doing here is that we are getting closer and closer or we are increasing the utilization of the network. And by doing that, it's not uncomplex, and there are new challenges showing up when there is little slack into the network. So what are we then actually doing? And what is interesting to look at? Well, for one thing, we have a large EU project, the coordinate project. It's done in many parts of Europe, and from the Swedish perspective, there are 4 demo sites. We have one up in Jämtland, we have one in Uppland, in the Uppsala region, we have one on the Gotland area, and one on Skåne. The Jämtland and Skåne parts are operated by E.ON, and the Uppland and Gotland is operated by Vattenfall. It has been running live during the last winter, and in a successful way. We are now preparing to move to the second winter, operating these markets on these locations, and we are also increasing the number of flexibility service providers acting on these markets, which is very, very, very interesting. Just to give an indication on how successful this has been, I would like to draw the attention to the volume cleared in Uppland in January to March. 3 months in just Uppsala region, we have cleared over 3.2 gigawatt hours of volume. And that is in a pilot first winter with limited number of flexibility service providers. So the potential is great. But we have still a lot of things to learn. We still have not found the exact products, how they will look. We have not found how everything is correctly managed. We, of course, from a customer point of view, this is completely new for them in many cases. Keeping ourselves in Uppsala, we are doing another pilot project where we are together with Vattenfall Network Solutions, which is on the competitive side of the Vattenfall group, doing a project, a battery storage project in Uppsala. We are building a 20 megawatt hour, 5 megawatt battery storage that will deliver a capacity service to the DSO and also act for balancing to the TSO. In these pictures here, you see on the lower hand picture the actual how the site looks as of last week, and it will be the battery storage will be operational in December 2020, so just 3 months away from now, and everything is going according to plan. Once operational, this will of course be part of the market, the coordinate market in Uppsala, so it will not work outside of the established market setup. So, and finally, just as we heard from notes, we have the Stockholm Flex project that is a flexibility market in the greater Stockholm region. If we have problems or challenges in capacity in Uppsala, then Stockholm has a number of magnitudes bigger challenge in solving this. So we are together with the Swedish TSO, Svenska kraftnät, and Ellevio and E.ON and Vattenfall trying to add nodes, trying to set up or will set up a market the coming winter as a pilot, as a test, to see if we can replicate the coordinate success also for the Stockholm area. And I'm quite convinced that we will see equally well results, because the interest is very high. There is a lot of flexibility service providers that want to take part in this market and learn how to actually contribute in order to make sure that we have the capacity needed to allow society developments. So thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Petter. I must announce, first of all, that we're about 15 minutes behind schedule, and we'll try to take in some of that time lag later. Thank you, Petter and Rune, for wonderful presentations. And there's a lot of innovation in the business models here. A lot of what Rune called pilot and partner strategy working, and that answers actually Åsa well. What she wanted was more cooperation in the planning, and Geir also was looking for more flexibility. So I think actually it matches quite well the challenges that the transportation sector sent on to us. The next step here in our presentation is the TSOs, the system operators. In Norway and Sweden, we have Svenska kraftnät and Statnett. They, of course, face many of the same challenges as the DSOs. increased consumption due to electrification, more intermittent power production. But they also have some other tools in their toolbox. Unique tools such as cross-border cooperation and international cooperation. We have invited Ulf Moberg, Technical Director of Svenska Kraftnät, and Gunnar Løvås, Executive Vice President of Market and System Operation at Statnett, to discuss some of these challenges related to electrification of transport, but also the rest of the battery value chain, including battery production and the large-scale industrial facilities, and also solutions that they are working on both together and on each side of the border. I'd like to start by asking Ulf a little bit about this, some of the challenges he sees in this space, this whole battery space, from the electrification of vehicles, charging the vehicles, and also to the production of the batteries. Ulf?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting us to this webinar. It's been really interesting presentations so far. From a TSO point of view in Sweden, we see it as a two-way challenge for us at the moment. And we think at the moment we are more concerned with the large consumption points, that is battery factories and other energy intensive industries like data server halls, which also include batteries, than electrification of the transport. We had a say in the localization of the large battery factory in Northvolt that's been now undergoing construction, where we were given the possibility to prioritize certain location in respect of the transmission grid. And going forward with this development, we think that it is very important that we are involved in such processes, because it's a very long process to build transmission lines. And if we can find spots where the grid is sufficient already today, it will be beneficial for all parties, we think. In the future, transportation and electrification will be a challenge, but up to now we see it as there are some uncertainties that has to be sort of solved regarding technology, charging patterns, and so on. And in that respect, it was very positive to hear that Scania seems to have a lot of answers in this matter, so it will be interesting to have a discussion. Today, Norway is ahead of Sweden regarding the electrification of the car industry and the transportation, and it will be important for us to learn from each other. We think, though, that the biggest challenges will be related to the large cities, where we already today have some capacity problems and where the highest demand will be. And here we must cooperate more with both local authorities, companies, and the DSOs to solve these challenges we see ahead.
So broader cooperation within a broader ecosystem. Gunnar, what about you in the situation in Norway?
I think fundamentally it's quite similar to Sweden. We have surplus of green power, so we welcome very much this development of electrification and new industries. That's very positive. We have a strong grid in the TSO setting, and even distribution grids are better suited for this development than most countries, as we have for a long time supplied power for heating in houses and offices. So we are well suited for this development, but still we are concerned about the big users, the new factories, that they are located in the right spots. And we are trying to be more proactive in our planning, meaning that we try to have a good dialogue with the industry to find the best spots for new factories, and that we can be ahead of time in developing the grid so that we can supply power. But we have lots of places where there is available space, and so we welcome new industries if they locate themselves in the right spots already.
And I think you mentioned earlier that you have a project called N3, Næringen Nett i Nord, where you really try to get this broader ecosystem around the same table to talk about possibilities and to be a bit more proactive.
Yeah, we started that project 2 years ago, and it was a great success in the sense that we managed to get lots of different players around the table and investigate the potential and need of all the different types of sectors, all the ones we have heard from today, from mining to transport to ships and aviation. It was it was a good arena for learning for us and for them, I think. And we finished that up in north of Norway last year, and after that we have continued with similar ways of working in different regions of Norway. And I think it's making us being more proactive, and it creates awareness in the industry that they have to talk with us in due time.
And what about Vattenfall and Auger Energy nodes? They both discussed flexibility markets as an important part of the solution, delaying grid investments. And this is also something that you are working on at TSO level. And I think here we'll start with Gunnar. What is your experience with this type of projects? I think nodes call them business model innovation, and they follow a pilot and partner strategy. That was great buzzwords. What's your experience, and how do you see this going forward for the TSOs?
We see clearly that flexibility is going to be of increased importance, of huge importance in the future when the share of renewables increase a lot. So we are fundamentally very positive to this, and actually indirectly we own a 15% share of nodes, and so we are following the development quite a lot, and we have been doing piloting in some of the projects that has been mentioned, and relating it to traffic and electrification of the transportation sector. It's important for us to give price incentives to smart charging during both the power price and the grid tariffs. And we are investigating the possibilities to utilize the flexibility even in the balancing and flexibility markets, meaning that we can stop charging or increase the speed of charging and having an impact on how the system is balanced, and meaning both the balancing sense and in the grid sense to reduce load on the grid. And we have done several examples of that. One of them last winter was cooperation with one of the aggregators to disconnect 160 cars. It was just one rather small sample, but we managed to see that that type of modification of load pattern was much quicker than what we could achieve by adjusting generation from hydropower plants. So the battery technology and the smart control of them is actually very quick and very promising.
And of course you have a large pool of EVs in Norway to test on. And Ulf, you have also been in this same type of projects in Sweden.
Yes, we have the same. Yes, that's right. We are the same opinion as Stadt in Norway. Since there takes a long time to build transmission line, we see flexibility as a solution to handle the capacity challenges we see. We are part of these two flexibility projects that was mentioned earlier, Coordinate and Stockholm Flex, that's now being tested. In Sweden, these flexibility markets are the main drivers are for grid purposes today, but that's of course of interest for us as a TSO, but we also see a possibility and potential in the future to coordinate them.
The sound is falling out here a bit. I'm sorry, Ulf, your sound was bad. I think Ulf just froze here and we lost the sound. I'm sorry, Ulf. But I have to say, I hope you're at the end here. But you have good experiences with these projects, Stockholm Flex and Coordinate, that were mentioned by Vattenfall and Nodes earlier. And I had just one last question for you, and I think I'll ask Gunnar, since Ulf has problems with his line right now, or we have problems with the line to Ulf. The Nordic system operators, you already know each other quite well. I know that Ulf and Gunnar do work closely together. And I'll ask Gunnar, what is your experience with the Nordic cooperation in general, and how do you see it going forward, specifically with this balancing market?
Yeah, we have been cooperating very closely in the Nordics for a long time. Sweden and Norway was connected in the beginning of the 1960s, and since the 1990s we have developed the power market together, and we are one synchronous area, which means that the frequency is the same. We have to cooperate to keep the balance and have control. And I think that all the 4 countries, we work very closely together in everything from grid planning to the daily system operations or in the microsecond frame. And now one of the biggest developments is the new balancing model, which is a huge development and change in the system. We are going for an almost fully automated system where we will have better prognosis and expert judgments built into the software, and it also makes it possible for us to react quicker and also include smaller bids and smaller units into the balancing system. And that's where the link to the previous topic, we will be able to utilize a lot more of the flexibility in the system in this automatic sense. And we are all eager to see that happening, and we are going the way forward with opening up for smaller bids into the regulating power markets. And I think in a short time frame, we will see aggregators be more and more active, and the technologies are already present and ready for use. And as soon as we have the logic on the top in place in a few years from now, we will see a huge development, I'm quite sure.
That was interesting, both technological developments and, as we mentioned earlier, the way their ecosystem is expanding to include other shareholders. I know that Ulf wanted to mention challenges in Sweden because they're shutting down production in the south, and that this Nordic balancing market could actually help Sweden because as good neighbours we could help each other. But I'm afraid we can't get Ulf back. I don't see him here, so I will wrap up.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but we can't see you. Yes.
Yeah.
I'll give you
I'm
a
back.
minute. Yes.
Yeah, sorry for. Yes, we have had a long history of cooperation, Sweden and Norway, both between TSOs and balancing the Nordic system. And I think these challenges will increase in the future with the development we see in Sweden, especially where we have a lot of renewable being installed in northern Sweden, and we see the conventional generation being taken out of operation in the south. So we will have an increased need for cooperation regarding balancing the Nordic system in the future. And we see and hope that new actors will come in to the market to provide these services we need to keeping the electricity system stable and in balance. And we are right now actually running a pilot where we look into if batteries can be a part of the reserve market we have, the disturbance reserves at the moment. We have had several other pilots introducing batteries into the markets, as Gunnar said, in smaller sort of actors coming into the markets to be a part of the balancing of the system.
And this actually connects back to what Gail said, that they've set up lots of infrastructure in Western Norway for charging the boats, and he wants that to be used by the grid. So we're coming full circle here. I think we have to thank you very much, Ulf and Gunnar.
Thank you.
We have one last presenter here before we wrap up.
Yeah, thank you, Benedicte, and thank you to Ulf and Gunnar. As pointed out in this section, Nordic collaboration is important to develop and handle the transition in the future. And I know networks and collaboration is something that is our next speaker is highly concerned about. Next up we have Tore Sekkenes from Auger Energy, and he's the program director for the European Battery Alliance. This initiative has been widely successful since its launch, and in the past 3 years attracted close to 500 industrial partners. The European battery investments are now approaching 100 billion euros, a 30-fold increase from 2017. Tore, the digital stage is yours. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, hello to everybody. Let me share my screen, and hopefully that works. Should be coming up now. So, I lead this European Battery Alliance. In the European Battery Alliance, we have the common goal to create a competitive and a sustainable battery industry in Europe. Listening to the previous speakers and to previous webinars, I think many of the key messages that I'm going to deliver are already obvious. One is that the Nordic countries have excellent preconditions for doing this, for creating a big contribution to the battery industry. I see a lot of areas which are already practicing cross-Nordic cooperation. And thirdly, it's pretty much up to us, most of us who are listening right now, and some more people, to create an even bigger industry around this. I will very briefly take you through, give a glimpse of the battery market. I will give a short status of where the battery industry is today, and then talk about preconditions for the Nordic EU countries, and then draw some conclusions from that. Moving on, hopefully my slide shifted. Market. You can divide the battery market in big terms. You can divide it into three sectors. One is transport, which we're talking about today. Another one is industry, all the other applications. And then you have a third stationary applications mainly for power transmissions and so on. But looking at the transport sector gives a pretty good impression. There's been a lot of talk over the last few years of where is the tipping point? When does the battery market really when does the demand really become much stronger? And we recently got the statistics from Transport and Environment, and looking at them at a distance, they look pretty much like what we've seen before. But there are some important differences. Before, it was usually Norway with this hockey stick curve pointing upwards, and we know they are way ahead of everybody else. But now it's actually the big countries that are on the graph. You see, if you can see my slide, it says Germany, France, the UK, Italy, Spain, and so on. So the other countries in Europe are following the Norwegian example, I'm happy to say. The other graph shows the quarterly change in sales for EVs and for vehicles with an internal combustion engine. And I think it's quite clear that, as I've stated on the slide, the EV market is now at or maybe beyond the tipping point, depending on what country you're looking at. In addition, remember, we're now looking at only one of the three sectors of the battery market. In addition, you have all the industrial and the power grid applications on top of that, which are also developing very strongly. We've heard today several people say that environmental, this pandemic, geopolitical problems actually drive the demand even harder than we thought before. So the problems that the world is facing has at least one seemingly good impact, and that is that it is driving the business that we're talking about here today. So that's the short glimpse of the market. It is there. Don't doubt the market. The market risk is virtually zero. Moving to the next slide. So where are we? How far have we come? 2-3 years ago, 2017, we collectively in the EU decided that to create this European battery industry. Back then, many people doubted that we would succeed in doing this, that we've lost the race already. Now, in 2020, this slide shows a number of different initiatives. It is by far not complete, that is for sure, but it clearly shows that the industry that we wanted to create is clearly on starting up. That's a clear impression you get when you look at the details of this graph that you should have in front of you. Some comments. There is less in the south of Europe, but there are some important projects in the south of Europe, and that gives me the opportunity to point at the battery industry is a value chain. These projects in Portugal and Spain, for example, they are all in raw materials. There are other cases as well. So the industry that we're looking at is a complete value chain. At the bottom of the graph, there is a thermometer or a graphical measurement of how much capacity have we then installed when it comes to batteries. And here you will see that we haven't come very far when it comes to actually producing batteries in Europe. But I'm happy to say that there are now several, I would say numerous, different initiatives in building factories to produce batteries in Europe. So I have good hope that we will be able to increase our capacity in the not so distant future. If we ever become self-sufficient, okay, we will see about that, but definitely we will be able to have a big part of the market share. Moving on to the preconditions and cross Nordic cooperation. This slide, the slide in the background, is a slide that I have stolen with pride to physically show that we are a circular industry, even reusing slides. Joke aside, this slide comes from a report made by Batteries Finland it was commissioned for Business Finland, and I'm using this slide for a couple of reasons. One, which earlier speakers have already confirmed, there is already a strong push for cross-Nordic cooperation, and there is an openness to share this. It was very easy for me to obtain this slide from colleagues in Finland. And also, if you go into the details of the slide, you will see that the preconditions for the Nordic countries are excellent. I'll come to that in just one second. Concluding on what the slide from our friends in Finland says, it says in the middle there, Nordic cooperation should be actively pursued at national and governmental levels. Well, we've already heard examples of that, and I can only fully agree with this conclusion, of course. A few words on what are these advantages then? I've tried to make a list of the things that I think are very important, and I could speak for 3 hours on these points. I will only go into some of them. good research and development environment. I'll come to that on the next slide. The point that I would like to underline more than what is on the slide from our Finnish friends is the innovation. The Nordic countries come out very well on rankings made when it comes to innovation, and this might seem like a fluffy thing, but it is fundamental in this historic change of technology that we're facing right now. It actually has epic proportions. It is then fundamental to be able to be open to innovation. I'd like to underline that several times. This is important. Let's embrace innovation. So I think I don't go deeper into these advantages, but they are several. We have touched upon reliable, inexpensive, and green electric power several times, or several of the speakers have touched upon that. But I go to the next slide, and this slide is I'd like to possibly everybody doesn't know this, but in fact, when it comes to R&D, we here in Scandinavia, we are actually leading the biggest project there is when it comes to large-scale research on batteries. It's called Batteries 2030 plus, and it links all of the important research projects on batteries in Europe. This is led by Kristina Edström, who works at Uppsala Universitet, and I think this is very important for many reasons. The fact that I'm talking now about research all over Europe and not just in the Nordics reminds me to bring up the topic. The topic of these seminars is, of course, the Nordic countries, and that's fine. We have excellent preconditions that we should definitely make good use of. But let's not forget that there is a lot of knowledge that we need in other countries, not only in Europe, but in other parts of this planet as well. So I'm very proud to bring in this little detail of all the good things that we have here in Scandinavia. This we are leading from Uppsala. Coming to conclusions. I think the first point is on market. The market, if anybody doubted it, the market for the battery industry is already there, and it's picking up faster than ever before. The problems we're facing, environmental, this pandemic, geopolitical issues, only accelerate this. It's even likely that the market will be supply constrained, meaning that we will actually struggle to meet the demand. This, in my books, means that cooperation should be the flavor of the day. So cooperation between companies, between countries, and so on is the right measure for the foreseeable future. Second bullet. The Nordic countries have unique preconditions to play a key role in the European battery industry. And finally, building this battery ecosystem, which is our task that we're talking about, is in fact a unique opportunity to build new industrial clusters. And I bring up an example which I find is fantastic, and that is what is happening in Skellefteå. Northvolt with sustainably powered by Skellefteå Kraft, with all the comments on power, is an industrial initiative which should be perfectly possible to extend beyond the local environment in Skellefteå to other Nordic regions. And in fact, that is happening already. Recently, Norsk Hydro and Northvolt publicly announced a project on recycling, and I know that Northvolt have several other projects with companies, not only in Sweden, but also in Norway and Sweden and Finland and other countries as well. So I think that example, along with all the other fine examples that have been brought up, is proof that it's actually happening. And I think I stop there.
Yeah, thank you, Tore. It's a pleasure as always. We are nearing the end of this webinar and then the end of the webinar series. We are on overtime, which I think is a good sign. It's a popular topic these days. Thank you so much to everyone who participated in the studio and on Teams. Thank you for everyone watching. This recording will, as always, be available at Innovation Norway's YouTube channel. We can send out a link to that afterwards. We were going to do some wrap-ups of the whole three webinars, but I think actually Tore had some really good comments on overall, so we're not going to take more time from your busy schedules. But Benedicte, do you have a few short points to sum up today's webinar?
Very quickly, I think Minister Bailan, he manifested some of the political will that we think is very important to continue this green transition in the Nordics. He stressed the importance of cooperation, public-private, across borders, in establishing a strong circular value chain in the battery sector. This transport companies, they showed opportunities, but also what they wanted to engage with the grid providers earlier on. They wanted some more flexibility there, and I feel the grid providers really answered those needs quite well. We need to innovate business models. We need to pilot and work with projects, and we're really piloting this for not only ourselves but the rest of the world. What we learned today is what the rest of the world can be doing tomorrow. The TSOs also stress the importance of locating power-intensive industry where they actually have power, so we don't make extra stress for them when we talk about the rest of the battery value chain. And they also discussed Nordic cooperation and coordination, and I think that's extremely important, that they have a good basis of cooperation and that we can continue to develop this while we're getting new technology, new business models, broader engagement in a larger ecosystem, but that we also at the TSO level are able to engage and cooperate. I think that's a unique, like, Nordic factor that we need to continue to develop and be thankful for. So thank you very much for great presentations and for demonstrating this will to cooperate going forward.
Yeah, thank you, Benedicte. And again, we had some sum up of the whole series. I think we're going to leave that for now, seeing we are on overtime, but I think it's a good sign. Again, tons of collaborations going on, a lot of activity in the industry, and stay tuned for more fun stuff from the Nordic battery scene. So thank you for today.
Thank you.